Today we get to sit down with our dear friend Catherine Hardwicke. When we were a brand new organization starting out years ago, we reached out to Catherine for our first summit and she said yes. We've been friends ever since and celebrating all of the cool, fun movies that we know and love her for. 13, Twilight, Miss Bala, Lords of Dogtown, and most recently Mafia Mama. We think you're going to love getting to know Catherine as well. Catherine, thank you so much for joining us today. It's great to see you. We've had the pleasure of knowing you for years now, and you've been such a friend to our organization. But we decided to start off. We think our group would love to hear how you started and what was your inspiration, what was your drive to get into film and the filmmaking process.
Well, I grew up in a little tiny town in South Texas. There was not much of a film culture there. There was one movie theater that mostly showed like some Clint Eastwood movies, some Spanish language movies. So I didn't really know too much about film, but I knew I loved to draw and make things and build and everything. So I went to architecture school and got a 5-year professional degree from University of Texas in Austin. Hook 'em horns, yeah. And so what my senior thesis project, I dressed up like my building. I had different layers to reveal different concepts and everything. And I had a dragon's head collecting all the water, solar powered, that spit out the water into a swimming pool. I mean, it was wild. And at the end, one of the visiting professors said, "Oh my God, you might not really fit in architecture, even though you've been working for 5 years studying architecture, because architects have to build everything in the building codes. There's huge financial stake. It takes years to make it. Even if you do homes, people want their house to look like a good resale value, like every other house, you know." So he said, maybe you should have an alternate career. But like, what does that mean? I just spent 5 years. But anyway, I then had to go ahead and take this job. I'd already started building 120 townhouses in a 3-acre lake and swimming pools. And I built all these things in South Texas, all solar energy and all kinds of stuff. It was crazy. But the whole time I kept thinking, what else could I do? I started seeing like Czechoslovakian animation and really cool things, beautiful drawings. So I applied to UCLA animation grad school and I got in. And so I went to grad school and I just loved it, but I had no money really. And so it was like I needed to get a job, and people said, "You're an architect, why don't you production design sets for movies?" So I thought, oh, that sounds cool, So I started getting to make sets for movies, zero budget for music videos, but everything was very creative and fun and crazy. And I was just, building, outrageous things, and you could have an idea and you could build it very quickly. I mean, even I worked for Roger Corman and other crazy low budget movies. And then I slowly kind of would get on a better job, a little bit better job. Like, I didn't know anybody in town, but I was kind of clawing my way up to better movies. And finally I got to work with, Richard Linklater, production designed 2 movies, one with Costa Gavras, one with Cameron Crowe. Oh, well, let's go before that. David O. Russell, 3 Kings, and Rachel Talalay, Tank Girl, super creative job. And finally I got to do Vanilla Sky, with Tom Cruise. I mean, it was amazing. And so I loved all that, but in between every job, I'm like writing my own screenplays, writing, and I'm taking take 5 years of acting classes, like I would take scene study, I would take comedy improv, because I knew I could do the visual stuff. After working with all these wonderful directors, I kind of helped them figure out ways to, scope of the movie and to build a set, to find locations, but I didn't have the acting background. So forcing myself to go up on stage, even do showcases, perform, oh my God, it was, mortifying, but it really helped me to see what it was like to be an actor. How do you connect with that material? How do you block out everything around you, all the lights, the camera, You know, the people talking about where they're going to go to dinner and actually become this character. So I thought that was really helpful to me because I kept writing a screenplay and I'd worked with all these great directors and wonderful producers and everything. But, you know, how do you get that chance to break out of the job they see you doing as a production designer and become a director? It's very challenging. So I would make my little short films, like when I wasn't on a job, I wrote a film about a Civil War, a woman that fought undercover in disguise as a man. But it was going to cost like $9 million. People said, well, you're not going to get your first movie to direct as a $9 million movie. Now, the other thing is, though, many of the directors I had worked with were first-time directors, men, more than a $9 million budget.
Of course.
Why can't I do it? So then I wrote a less expensive movie, like a $5 million movie. It had some action, some cool stuff. I love to ride mountain bikes, rock climbing. I put all that in. People are like, no, 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 you're not going to. Women don't really direct action. You know, that's, even though I had it all storyboarded, I had shots of me climbing and doing all the things. And, you know, I'd gone out and filmed little teaser trailers. Then I'm like, oh, I've got to come up with a less expensive movie. I had to look at some of my heroes. Richard Linklater, his first movie, Slacker, was only like $7,000 to make, you know, originally to shoot. David O. Russell did Spanking the Monkey for like $70,000. So I'm like, I got to write something that maybe doesn't have any action, I don't need a stunt coordinator or stunt doubles. But when I was trying to figure it out, at that time, a real life situation happened to me, which became the movie 13. And that was with my family friend, Nikki Reed, who was 13 at the time. So I had been gone out of town probably maybe about 6 months on a movie in Vancouver where I was a production designer. When I came back, Nikki had changed. She was used to be this like super lively little wild girl climbing trees, tomboy and everything. When I came back, she was literally looked like J-Lo with the hair, the makeup. She was waking up at 4:30 in the morning to get dressed for junior high, 2 hours of hair and makeup. I'm like, wow, what is going on? And she had a dark cloud hanging over her. She suddenly used to be so close with her mother. Now she hated her mother. She hated her father. She hated everybody. But she didn't hate me because I wasn't a direct family member. I didn't live with her. So I thought, well, maybe I can be helpful. And I was trying to get her to, you know, let's go, let me teach you how to surf. That's fun. That's creative and positive. Let me teach you how to draw. Let's go to museums. She said, well, I don't really like those things. That's what you like. I want to be an actor. And I thought, oh my God, acting, that's going to make you even more self-conscious and more concerned about your appearance. But if that's what I didn't say that. I thought if that's what she wants to do, let me try to help her facilitate that. So I took her to a bunch of acting classes, and they were really too advanced for a 13-year-old with sexual situations. I'm like, oh, this. And then the ones for kids were like, you know, how to smile in a toothpaste commercial. So I'm like, okay, we're going to have to write our own script, okay, that you can star in it, and I'm going to direct it. And I had the foresight, let's go ahead and sign an agreement. But we never thought, you know, and with her mom and dad and her brother, we never thought it would happen because I'd never directed a movie and she'd never acted in a movie. But we did write this screenplay, and I was thinking all about it. I was working on Lisa Cholodenko's beautiful movie called Laurel Canyon at the time. I was the production designer. And I was thinking, okay, we're going to do that as soon as we wrap. And so I was observing Nikki and her friends and her parents' friends, and her friends' parents, everything that all these girls were going through, all these pressures about how to be a hottie, you know, in 7th grade, and if they're not hot enough, and, you know, I'm like, wow, this is mind-blowing. And so when the movie wrapped, we sat down to write this. Now, at Christmas, she had 6 days off after her family holidays and before she had to go back to middle school. I go, we're going to write it in 6 days, okay? And she and her mom were not, we'd been thinking about that, and she and her mom were not getting along. So I said, she can stay over here with me, at the beach for 6 days, and we'll just try to get this done. And it was an incredible experience because we wrote it standing up. We wrote it acting it out. I would act out. She would play herself, and I would play all the other roles. The brother, the mom, the friend, blah, blah, blah. And then we'd write it down, And at the end of the 6 days, we had this very volatile, wild screenplay. And so she went back to middle school, and then I went back and hung out with her mother a little bit more to round out the mother character, because the mother, played by Holly Hunter, she eventually got an Academy Award nomination for Golden Globe and everything, but Holly's character was originally written as a one-note villain, so I had to make her more human. And then I thought, nobody's going to stop me. I'm going to make this movie. It's all about people, basically poor people. They can wear my clothes. We can shoot in my house. We can use my car, And I just told my agent, I'm not going to take any other production design jobs. Oh, but here's a big one with Michael Mann. No, I've got to make this movie. And I was focused to make it before Nikki turned 14. I wanted to make, but then her birthday was in July, oh dear. And so she was 14 and like 1 month when we made the movie. And I wanted to do it when school was out so that it wouldn't interrupt her flow and cause any more damage to her, because she was already going through so much tumult. So, that was an idea that just like, I'm fixated on making this. This is gonna happen, one way or the other. I've got to make this movie, because I felt it was about a subject that was powerful and untouched, really. We didn't see that in the film business. Nobody really showed us what it was like to be this young girl and a mother of a young girl at this time.
Teen angst kind of has followed you, like in terms of some of your movies.
Yeah, the realness. You started the real, the real authentic movement of that. So what did the budget end up being? Because you were trying to go down and down and down. What did you end up doing it for?
1.5 million,
Oh,
and non-union. And at the beginning, though, we did get flipped, so the last 2 days became union. And it was just like, I think it was 21 days, but the girls were only available since Evan Rachel Wood and Nikki Reed were only allowed, since they were underage, they could only work like 8.5 hours. So we had, it was equivalent of about 18 days, and it was really, a sprint. I mean, I basically had a wonderful AD, but I was kind of my own AD too. I had my shot list, and every 7 minutes there was another shot, or 12 minutes. And if somebody wasn't ready, I one time ran out to the trailer and I told Holly, and she was, half of her makeup was done, one eye was done. I go, listen, I need you now. I promise I will shoot you in profile. We will not see the other eye, but if we don't get this shot now, then we won't get the next shot, we won't get the scene, and we won't have a good movie. And I was so enthusiastic. Went, okay, and she ran out there, and we did shoot that one side of her face. It's in the movie. She's out on the front porch. You don't see the other side.
That's amazing. The story's so inspiring for people who think that is, young filmmakers, new filmmakers that think it has to be perfect. Like you said, I have to have $100 million budget for my first movie, whatever it is. That everything, that you can write a movie in 6 days if you're passionate about it. You can shoot a movie in, the time frame that you have. You can get the people. It's that inspiring story of when you want to get it done, you can get it done.
Yeah, I thought that would be the next case. I'd write the next screenplay in 6 days.
Standard.
Not always that easy. But, that one, I had been thinking about it, before that. And that's really a lot of the effort. I had been observing Nikki, her friends, her family, you know, all these interactions. And so it was all going in my head, and then it did kind of spill out, you know. But it doesn't always go that easy. But also, you know, I thought during that time, because I just pushed everything else aside. I did not work on anything else. I didn't take any paying jobs or whatever. I said, I'm going to get this made absolutely laser focused. So all day long, I would just wake up, triangulate, okay, what else could I do to make the movie? Who else could I call? Who could I get to? How could I refine the script? How could I do acting classes with Nikki? You know, I was paying out of my own pocket for her to do acting classes, and then every weekend working with her too, and you know, just anything I could do, because my promise to her was that she got to star in it, and if I got to direct it, because it was her story. So I had to get her up to speed, learn how to, you know, act in front of the camera and everything. But the next project, you know, it's not that easy if you think I'm going to work on only one thing. And then if that thing just has too many obstacles and you can't make it happen, then you could have spent a year of your life and you didn't do anything else. It can be very discouraging. So that's why you see, and sometimes there's just a roadblock. It's not the right time for it, or it is too expensive to make it. And in that case, on that movie, you know, I got paid $3 total for the whole movie, 13, right? And that's not sustainable, you know.
No, $3 is not.
$3 to work for a year. I mean, even when Fox Searchlight, you know, looked at it at Sundance and bought the movie, and then they said, now you're going to go on a tour to like 10 cities and talk to, you know, police chiefs and drug counselors. We're going to do this program where we show the impact, like an impact program, you know, Q&As. I didn't even have anything to wear. I'm like, dude, I mean, I don't even have a budget for clothes. I just have like work clothes from being a production designer, like t-shirts. And so they said they wouldn't give me a budget, but they said you can come to the Fox costume department, their TV costume department, and see if you can find anything there that you could wear for your tour. You know? And that really wasn't my style, but I was like, and my costume designer, Cindy Evans, was amazing. She helped me put some outfits together, you know, because I'd never been in front of the camera, you know. So it was fascinating. But the next projects, what I found, you know, is a lot of times you do have to have more than one thing going. You've got to get those plates spinning. You've got to be juggling a couple projects. And that's very stressful because on one hand, if you did just fully concentrate on one thing, it did work for me 1 or 2 times that I got that made, you know. But then in some cases, it just doesn't work. You just can't make the lightning strike. You can't get all the ducks to line up. You can't get that actor to read it because they're on another show, and you can't get the money. So, or you do have the wonderful actor, and somehow people don't think the script is ready, and you can't, you know, whatever. So I've always, since then, usually had to have more than one thing, you know, that you're trying to, you know, pour your love and, you know, water it and put it out in the sun. Grow.
Did you know Holly and Evan before they came on to 13, or how did you get connected? I mean, obviously they're so amazing and accomplished. How did you meet them?
I did not know either of them, but I did have a really nice casting director that, you know, she was trying to help me. But our producer, one of our 2 wonderful producers, Michael London, he knew Holly Hunter's manager, and he got so excited over the lookbook I made and over my enthusiasm about it and the authenticity felt in the script that he said, let me try to get Holly's manager excited. So I went and did my whole like speech to Holly's manager, and he sent it to Holly, and she was living in New York, and at this moment I was in LA. I get a call, Holly wants to meet you like tomorrow at 2:00 in New York. I'm like, okay. So I ran with my video camera, ran over to Nikki's house, and I filmed her and her mother you know, who she was going to be playing her mother saying hi to Holly and this and that, telling her about it. I showed the house. I got on the plane and I went to Holly's beautiful loft in New York, and I flipped open the little video camera and showed her, you know, here's the woman you'd be playing. And Cheryl was so funny. She goes, Holly, I want you to play me because you got bigger boobs than me, you know. And, so, and Holly was like, wow, okay. I showed her the hair cutting station and all this stuff. And I think Holly, you know, was like, wow, this is gritty and real. But she told me, look, I've been burned before by a first-time director. I need to be a producer and I need to be involved in the casting. And I have 3 scenes that I think you left out. And she had some great notes for me. And she acted out a scene, and I'm just like, oh my God, Holly Hunter is acting out. I'm getting a solo performance from Holly Hunter. And I thought, oh, okay, great. So I took the notes. On the plane, I wrote those scenes. I found a place that I thought they would fit in the movie. I wove them into the film, and I sent it back to her when I landed. And I think that impressed her because she said, you know, you listened to me, you heard me, you found a way to artfully weave it in, and that made her feel more confident, and she signed on, you know. So, but I had told myself, you know, the yes and. If she had criticism of the script, I said, Catherine, don't fight back. Just listen to her, which I think is a good lesson when people do criticize or have notes. Okay, just let me write that down. Let me process it. Let me think about it, you know, and then get back to you. So that would be a helpful tip that helped me at least, yeah.
With your other projects, and you know, you like we were talking about, you have so many. Do you have a preference of writing your own, or are you're open to other scripts coming to you? But do you prefer one way or the other?
Well, you know, it's really fun. It's more fun to write with somebody else. Like it was fun to write with Nikki, and I just wrote a screenplay with Nick Sheff, who wrote Beautiful Boy, and that was his story, and that was a lot of fun having somebody to bounce off. Right now, I'm writing one by myself, so it's tough, you know, being in a room by yourself, but I'm still trying to feel it and jump up and say the lines even with myself and get inspired, and you know, so either way I think. But I also love it when somebody has a beautiful project and a beautiful writer has written something amazing that's personal to them, and if I feel a connection to it or get excited about it, that's fun too, you know. And then usually there will be some kind of a collaboration where I'm like, man, I love your script, but let's get it to be more visual, or let's get it to be more cinematic or more active. Can we move that scene, you know, whatever, to a roller skating rink or something that it feels more, you know, more movement? That because I'm of course thinking, how can I shoot it and make it interesting, you know, and dynamic. I mean, of course, every movie has to balance that. There's got to be the quiet scenes and where you get inside the character's head and everything too. But, you know, for the most part, that's sometimes what I find with screenplays, that they're a bit too static, you know, and we need to add a little life. Like, for example, Twilight was a good example. It's a book that's very internal, and Stephanie Meyer wrote this book that captivated millions and millions of people. But it's internal, like you're thinking, you're feeling what Bella is thinking. You're looking at, you know, the vampire. Oh my God, you're looking at Edward and just, you know, contemplating how beautiful he is, like multiple times in the book. Well, we can't really do that in a movie. We can't just have multiple scenes. We have to make her passion, their passion, you know, physical in a way, more cinematic. So, like in the movie, there's no treetop sequence. In the book, there's no treetop sequence. But I kind of thought that up, like, let's make this sequence where you get the advantages of being with a vampire that can, you know, superhuman powers and can kind of, you know, fly through trees, and you feel that exhilarating feeling. And so that's something that we added in. And how do you create that feeling? That was also working with a wonderful writer, Melissa Rosenberg, So that was kind of fun too, having somebody to, work with. Like I would go up to Forks, and while she was writing it, and I would take pictures. Here's this really cool diner. Let's put this diner in. The diner wasn't in, but now it's kind of a fun scene. And I send her pictures of the menu, and so you get that wonderful collaboration.
With Twilight, that was, it's one of the most commercially successful films, ever.
Yeah.
How did that, coming out of that, that really gave you a lot of spotlight as a female director. What was that like for you?
Well, it was exciting. I mean, we didn't. I got to make it like an indie film. We were in a bubble. Every studio turned it down. Nobody wanted to make it. Paramount put it in turnaround. They thought this won't make any money. It's a girls' book. The other girls' book, Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants, that made $29 million. They're like, that's probably all this is ever going to make. Well, opening weekend we made 69 million, and eventually 400 million with just the first one. So I wasn't really under the spotlight making it. There wasn't the huge pressure because I got to make more like an indie. I mean, you can see the cast were not stars at the time. There were no known actors, very well-known actors in it at all, almost none. And so it got to be just really kind of real and fresh. And I've, but as we started realizing, like when we went to the Rome Film Festival, I think and it was just a little sneak preview. The movie wasn't out. We just had like a teaser trailer, but they sent Rob and Kristen and I there. And we went to a book signing at this bookstore, and there was a line like 5 blocks along, and we got mobbed, rushed going back to the car. We didn't have any bodyguards for Kristen and Rob, but we almost got killed, so we suddenly realized, oh my God, okay, this is elective. This is going to come alive. This is in Rome, and we haven't even had the movie come out. And it started to dawn on us like, wow. I remember Kristen one day said, I came out of my house, the movie wasn't even out, to go to breakfast, and there's paparazzis out there. And I'm like, oh my God, what have we done, Because I felt Rob and Kristen were very sensitive, and they weren't like the kind that wanted all that kind of attention. And, I sort of felt guilty, like, oh my God, what's going on? But I think, yes, I realized I had to do a lot of interviews and everything too. They put me out there, and then I had to do like an intro for each of the scenes on the DVD, the making of or something. So that was weird, suddenly I had a lot of attention. And then so we were doing all the press, and it was really fun. And, you would go and you just see all these kids loving the movie and everything. But then, it flipped when I didn't want to do the sequel. And it came out that I was fired, which technically, or in no way could I be fired, because it was in my contract that I got to do it if the first one was successful. And I stepped away and didn't want to do it because I loved the first book more. I felt it was more original and passionate, and I didn't want to just go like on repeat like a robot and do the next one. I wanted to do something different. But there's a lot of negativity with that, publicity. So I felt, kind of crushed. It was in the same moment of this triumph. Then, the tide turns, which happens a lot, I guess, to women. Whatever, Sandra Bullock wins an Academy Award, finds out 2 days later the husband's cheating on her, or what, like life is very bumpy. And, we know that. And so you have to find ways to just keep going.
Yeah.
How soon did that start after the first one came out? Did you feel like you were under pressure to squelch the rumors about the second? Were you still in the kind of euphoria of the first one?
Well, I think it was only about a week after it came out, because
Oh my
we
gosh.
were actually already, Rob and Kristen and I were in Paris when I got the call from the studio head that I knew I had to do a whole bunch of press the next day, and everybody at every press junket was asking me, what about the next one? And I kind of didn't really feel like lying. I go, why don't we just announce, today that I'm not going to do the next one? And so he said, okay, we'll make a nice announcement. But somehow it leaked out to somebody in the PR department, and they put a mean one out, that Catherine was fired 1 hour before our, congenial announcement was going to come out. And that really had a lot of, it was disconcerting because, I mean, I was distraught. I had been working every second, 24/7, doing everything I could to finish the movie and promote it and do all the things I was supposed to do. And then that happened, with mean things, which were a lot of code words at that time that I didn't know about, so I took them more personally. But later on, when the books came, different books came out where you could see in other industries those same code words were used for women: difficult, emotional. I realized it wasn't just used just for me, it was used for women in every industry.
Well, and you couldn't even enjoy and celebrate the hard work that you had done and the success that you had, or you were all, Stephanie and the actors and the studio. I mean, that was for Summit. That was the movie that made their studio, and to not even allow you to, yeah, to enjoy that is,
Well, I had a little bit. I mean, if I focus on the positive, every audience
yeah, oh,
loved it and had
yeah.
fun. And even now, we're still talking about, we're having the 15-year reunion.
Yeah.
We have, all the new audiences, TikTok during the pandemic, everybody that rediscovered it. There's still fun events. Every event that I ever go to, there's so much love and positivity and everything. So, I still feel in general a very positive,
Good.
experience. Yeah.
What did you take from that movie, as well as all the commercial success towards your next movie? As you started to look at new projects, it's like going from a Twilight, global phenomenon. What were you looking for next, and what were your takeaways?
I was thinking that, I would have a lot of options after that, so like anything that was interesting. I mean, I'd been working so hard on Twilight that I hadn't written a new thing, or wasn't 100% sure what to do, but I thought, there would be a lot of options, and there were some options coming toward me, but some things, the doors were shut. I've often talked about, whatever that movie, The Fighter, that David O. Russell did end up doing. I didn't know he was going to do it at the time. I wouldn't have tried to compete with him. I loved it. But, I thought that was an open assignment. I tried to get a meeting in the room, and, they couldn't even meet with me. No, this has to be directed by a guy, there's action in it, but it's a family drama. I did a family drama that was very acclaimed, 13, and I could get in. I really want to do this, and I like action. I do all kind of sport. No, we're not even going to meet. I wouldn't even meet with you, So there were many doors still closed, and I guess people could say sometimes, oh, well, they considered Twilight to be successful not because of you, the book was already successful, or something like that, but even so, like the first script that I read, I threw it out. I thought it was bad. I said, we got to make a new script. It's got to be much truer to the book, and like I said, I did all the research and, found the actors. Rob and Kristen did their auditions right here at my house, as everybody did, so it was very personal for me. I was very, very hands-on, but they did have me make a cool little book where I showed my whole process that turned into a 50 country bestseller or something like that, where you could see that I really had sort of handcrafted the movie. So that made me feel a little bit better, Yeah.
What's attracting certain projects to you now? Are there certain
yeah.
genres or stories, or is it female protagonists? Do you like what's attracting you these days?
I've always, of course, been, feel a lot for female protagonist and what a woman is going through, a young girl, woman at all different ages of her life. What are you going through? So that's naturally, I'm drawn to that. The teenage years, we talked about the teenage things. Of course, I love that time period because it's so volatile. So much happens. It's your first kiss. It's your first time to drive a car. It's your first everything, your first drink, or you get to be independent. So there's a lot of drama in that time, which makes for a good film too. I did a movie that was pretty much all boys, a lot of boys, Lords of Dogtown, but that was I thought it was the brother or sister project to 13, because these boys were going through a lot of tough stuff in their families. They were from the wrong side of the tracks in Venice and everything, but they found a creative way to put their angst. They found a way, they invented all kinds of skateboarding tricks and really a whole new language and style and everything. So I thought, oh, that's kind of a good flip side. And then of course, Nikki's in that movie too, and I went in there and enhanced the female parts and really built up the women characters as much as I could. But, I think I'm usually going to be attracted to a story of a woman going through a difficult journey, or in the case of Mafia Mama, after we'd been in the pandemic for a long time and the negativity, Toni Collette sent me this script that was just pure fun. It was just absolutely a blast and funny and outrageous. And I thought, okay, I want to laugh. Half the time at night, I'm like, yeah, I love serious movies and dramas, but sometimes you just gotta laugh, as we go through certain gloomy times, or we listen to the news or politics. Let me just have a little bit of escape. So that's why I really want to do that movie, though it was a woman. Tony's character was really put down and ignored by the men in her life, and then she had to, she found herself in a way in Italy, which that wasn't bad, getting to shoot in Italy.
I was going to say, that sounds beautiful.
It was gorgeous too. Do you have a preference as you see these projects and these women, whether they're real, because you have a mix of fictional characters like Twilight, and then so many real characters. Is it just a good story, or do you have a preference? Like Miss Bala is one that comes to mind. That character and that story was just so amazing of that young girl and woman's life. Truth is stranger than fiction, definitely sometimes.
Right, and I think, yeah, it's so interesting. And the tough thing about truth, a true story, a biography, if you're working closely with the people, you obviously, like in 13 in Lords of Dogtown, was working very closely. The real people are in the movie and they're there on the set every day. How do you honor them and make them feel okay and good and embrace it and feel safe in the movie that you've made about their life, but you can't show them as a saint or perfect. It's going to be flat and boring. So you have this crazy balance, and in like Lords of Dogtown, some people did not, one person in particular, that was a very cool part of the story. He didn't want to be represented by anybody, any way, shape, or form. So we had to leave him out. But the other people, like the character Skip Engblom, who's played by Heath Ledger, he goes, I want to be shown warts and all. I was messed up half the time. Go ahead and let me be real, which made that character so beautiful and amazing and layered. And Heath did such a great job with that character. So you really have to balance all that. And that's tricky, that's very tricky. And people's opinions change over time. I know Nikki's feelings have changed about 13 over time, Of course, it was in such a pivotal part of her life, and there's times she'll read an article, I'm sure that could sting, or, then she'll read people embracing it and it feels good, So yeah, it's a wild ride when you make a story about a real person. I'm working on a script with a friend of mine about Diane Warren. It's her story, and she's involved in it, and she's the singer-songwriter that's I mean, the songwriter, not the singer. She's been nominated for 14 Academy Awards for Best Song, Best Original Song. But she had a crazy childhood with, getting kicked out of 3 schools and thrown into juvie hall and being bullied. And everybody, 2 times in juvie hall, everybody bullied her. They laughed at her, said even her family said there's no way you're going to make it as in the music world. Her music teacher, her guitar teacher said she was tone deaf, had no musical talent, but it's a story of resilience, like just believing in yourself and fighting against all that. So as I've written the drafts, I've read it out loud to Diane, trying to make sure she feels good about it. But Diane is like a badass. She's happy to go ahead and show me, edgy and outrageous. She's fine with it. So it depends on the person. And then for this beautiful anthology series called Tell It Like a Woman, that went to the UN and everything, I wrote 2 stories on 2 real women and they, were both amazing women that really do great stuff in the world. And I interviewed them and spent time with them at their clinics and everything. And then they're portrayed on screen. Marcia Gay Harden portrays one of them, and Jennifer Hudson plays the other one. So, I love that, being able to celebrate these 2. Those are short films, like 15 minutes, but to celebrate something amazing these women did.
So tell us a little bit about your next project. You were talking about Prisoner's Daughter.
Oh yeah, so Prisoner's Daughter, the same thing, is another woman that's a single mom played by Kate Beckinsale, and she's in Vegas. She's a working mom. She doesn't have a lot of money. Her dad was in prison for a large chunk of her life. He's played by Brian Cox, and so they've had a very estranged relationship, but in the last years of his life, at the very end of his life, he's got cancer, and he's able to get out of prison and spend the last 5 months with his daughter on compassionate release if she accepts him. Now she needs the money. He has some prison money, so he's going to pay rent and everything. She has a son that he doesn't even know about, so he gets to meet the grandson. They have a very tough relationship. He's got the ankle bracelet on at the house. So it's very contained. I mean, we're almost trapped as a prisoner also in this house with them. And you feel like all the past relationships coming out. You see the multi-generational trauma, because her husband, that is the father of her kid, also had violent tendencies like the father. You see repeating patterns. You see, how do we unlock that, pattern? So it's very intense. And Kate and Brian and all the actors are just very strong and beautiful. And we had a big premiere at TIFF at Toronto Film Festival. That was gorgeous, big audiences. But those kind of movies, now that we don't have the ArcLight and some other theaters, they're harder to get out there. People want to go to the theaters for a big blowout, event movie or whatever. A little less common to go for a drama because we can see it on our screen at home. So, it's coming out of theaters though, and so, hopefully people can embrace it, and, beautiful performances by both of them.
From a directing style perspective, you're working with bigger names, Tony Collette and Brian Cox, and then you've also worked with some up-and-comers like Kristen and Robert and so forth over the course of these films. How would you, if you were to talk to an up-and-coming director, what would be the style? How did you find your style? What would you tell them to find their own style?
I would say that in some ways, with 13, I was kind of like a method director since I'd been taking the acting classes. And even when I'm writing the script 13, of course, as I mentioned, I was acting out all the characters and I was trying to feel what it would be like. And so even as I'm directing, I'm trying to feel, how can I show what this character is feeling? I think that's my style the most. You could say, I mean, of course, as a director, you got to have your right brain, left brain. You have to have the practical side. How can I get all these shots done in one day, in X amount of hours? And with the physical limitations of the sun is moving, or it started to pour down rain today. So we have multiple challenges, but and you want to feel like what kind of shots are really going to convey this feeling. And in 13, Nikki was very kinetic. Like when I was writing with her, she would be like moving all the time. She would be dancing. She would get a phone call from the boyfriend. And at first it was all lively and they'd be, having a blast. And then he'd say something, she'd burst into tears. And then she'd get mad and throw down the phone. That would all be in 30 seconds. I'm like, whoa, that's what I need to convey in this film. And so I realized this was not going to be a static camera. In this case, I'm like, I gotta kind of do war photography and like move with her. So when I was going over to her house and her mom and sort of researching the project, I tried to kind of film and keep up with her as she ran into her room and yelled at her mother. So that's the style that I used for 13. Like the cameraman is literally trying to catch up with these characters when they're exploding and coming together,
And then, in terms of where your style has evolved, are you still feeling that you're more method as, do you still apply all of that as you're looking at scripts and you're looking at some of the new projects that you're looking at up and coming, or do you let the actors really kind of get into it and then you formulate, based on where they're at as well as they're bringing themselves into the characters?
Let's say in the prep phase, you don't have the actors maybe, or in the writing phase, you don't have the actors. So you're trying to feel it to give a scene that is, create a scene if you're writing it yourself or working with a co-writer or with the writer as a director. Any of those methods, I'm still trying to feel, what is this character feeling, and how can I express that? And that's going to be in the prep stages, and then you're trying to attract an actor who's going to be the right actor. So, you're trying to create some kind of, images and lookbooks of how maybe they would dress. And if that's based on a real person or a type of person, doing research, what is interesting? What is that person wearing and why? And what are they conveying with their clothes? And how much money do they spend on their clothes? And how do we get it right, So, yeah, like with Prisoner's Daughter, same kind of thing. And Brian Cox's character had been in prison for many years. So when he gets out, he kind of wears the same thing. He kind of has his go-to, doesn't have a lot of clothes, minimal wardrobe, but he feels comfortable in almost repeating. And Brian kind of felt like that too, He had certain shirts he wanted to wear, but then there's a birthday party for his his grandson. And so he splashes out a little bit and kind of like a tiki shirt, And I said, Brian, do you want to wear a hat? He goes, I hate hats. I go, okay, but let me just show you a couple we could just play with. So he puts his hat on. He loved it. And he wears it. He kept it and he wears it all the time. So, you want to go as far as you can as a director, having options and ideas and references on characters and time period, and then you want to be able to play with the actors, like how can we find something, create something together that works for you, like Kate's character. Kate Beckinsale's character was a dancer in Vegas, but now she's single mom and actually works behind the scenes because maybe she's kind of aged out of the dance, the showgirl dancing. And so she doesn't have any money. All the money she puts into her kid. So where does she go? Unfortunately, buying clothes online from fast fashions. They aren't high quality, but they can still have style because she has style. So, we tried to dress Kate in clothes that her character could really afford. Now, of course, you put those clothes on Kate, she already looks sensational. So, she looks too good, But, so you're always trying to balance, what works with the character and And Toni Collette, she has a transformation in Mafia Mama, a really fun transformation that Monica Bellucci is showing her to how to be a mafia donna. Monica Bellucci is all, she's Italian style personified. So
Right.
she does a full makeover for Toni, and that was a lot of fun. We arranged all of Toni's costumes in order of her character evolution. So the first day she walked into the costume department in Rome, we had them all in order. You start in these kind of more conservative colors, drab colors, then you start adding this and it's more sophisticated. As you fall in love, it blooms back out. So you could kind of just see a visual evolution, which helped Toni kind of figure out her character too.
Yeah, that's the evolution of Toni in Mafia Mama is amazing. So the and the I can't wait to see Prisoner's Daughter. That is going to be
Sounds fantastic.
we will definitely be at theaters. I know we want to talk. We're out of time. We want to talk to you. We want to talk to you more. Hopefully, we can come back. Maybe in the fall when you're working on other projects. But you have been, all of these stories have just been so not only inspirational for us, but our women in entertainment, audience, our membership. That I can't thank you enough for how many, teaching moments you've shared with us today, for production design, for actors, for costumers, for directors, yeah, for writers. I mean, you touched on so many things that we're so appreciative of your time. Thank you so much for coming with us.
Well, this was great. You guys are so cool, and thank you for doing this. We really appreciate it. Yeah.
If you enjoyed this episode, subscribe and leave a review on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. To stay up to date with In Her Words, join the conversation by following Women in Entertainment on our social channels and subscribe to our weekly newsletter at womeninentertainment.com.